Hi, folks. Welcome to the Getting Your Edge podcast. My name is Dennis.
And hi, I'm Judy Gratton.
And we're here to help you right-size your home and your life. Good day, all. This is Dennis Day with the Edge Group team, and this is the Getting Your Edge, How to Right-Size Your Home and Life podcast. I have two guests on the eve of Thanksgiving 2023. My co-host is, of course, Judy Gratton. We have our special guest, Wesley Hawkins from Puget Sound Puppers, and we're going to talk about taking care of your pet when you're downsizing and or moving. Okay, before we get started, though, it's almost Thanksgiving. Judy, what are you thankful for?
Oh my gosh, Dennis, a lot. Our business, our new company that we're with, all the people that we've worked with, just too many things. Today, it's a beautiful day.
Wesley, have you got things you're thankful for?
Well, the first thing I was going to say was thanks a lot for having me on your podcast. It's awfully generous of you.
It's great to have you here. And I am thankful. What I think I say that on my gratitude journal, I always say I'm thankful for a warm bed and a warm house to live in every day. And I know that's not something everybody has. And I am very, very grateful for that. So let's get going. Wesley Hawkins, tell us about Puget Sound Puppers.
Well, Puget Sound Puppers is the company that I own, and I founded in 2010, right after I moved to Seattle from Chicago. And we've been going ever since. We managed to survive the pandemic madness, and that's the other big thing I'm thankful for every day. If I leave the house to go to work, still doing this, then that's a good day, in my opinion. And what we do is we are primarily a dog care company, although now and then we'll take care of pets that aren't dogs, but our main focus is on dogs. And I'm a certified dog behavior consultant, which means that most of the time when folks are having some kind of behavior problem with their dog, they'll track me down and I'll help them out with it. And then other services that we offer are daily walks with dogs all over Seattle. And then on a little bit more limited basis, we do in-home pet sitting for our clients who travel.
Okay.
How many people do you have working with you, Wesley?
Well, these days we've only got a couple. There's four right now. There's four of us on the team, including me.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, we had a little bit of a like most businesses, we were lucky to stay in business after 2020.
I bet.
Yeah, so we had quite a few people, I think approaching 20 employees at the time. Just like a lot of other service-based companies, things got picked off here and there, and then we were kind of left with what we were left with. But we managed to keep a pretty good core employees who wanted to stick around, so we made do with what we had, and we've come back quite a bit from our lowest point. But we've got, as I said, a team of four of us, and that seems to be doing pretty good for now.
Thank goodness you were able to survive that. Wesley, can you give us some tips on what the moving process would look like or how to make it less stressful for your dog?
So ideally, what you would want to do if you're moving, right when you start to consider, I think we want to sell our house or move to a different house or something, right when you're starting to really have serious discussions about that, that's exactly the same time that you need to be thinking about what you're going to do with your dog come not only moving day, but even before that, especially if you've got a property that you're living in and you know that you're going to need to have prospective buyers coming in and out at different times. That's when you want to start thinking whether, if you already have a relationship with a professional, either like myself or even someplace that's a facility like a dog daycare. And Seattle has a lot of those too. in addition to companies like mine, that's when you need to start reaching out to people that you already have a relationship with, or if you don't, that's when you need to look into what your options are as far as talking to, just opening a conversation with some companies that seem to fit what your needs are for your particular dog. So, for example, if your dog is really well socialized and loves to be around other dogs and doesn't have any problem with you being away from you, and they think, wow, this is great. They drop me off at this place with all my friends, and this is awesome. And then when you show up to pick them up, they are wondering who you are and why you want to take them away from the fun time. Some places like that, then that would probably be your go-to option. And then you want to reach out to whoever it is that's usually your contact person, and just talk to them about, hey, look, we're looking about putting our house up, and it's going to be maybe a couple of months or whenever, and I'm going to need to talk to you about what I should be doing with my dog. And that may just be dropping them off for a few days at a stretch extra, or it might also be they take the dog overnight for a few nights. Or that maybe if you have a relationship with a dog walking company like mine, or you've had us in to spend the night with your dog when you've had vacations, you want to start mentioning that right now, that, hey, we're thinking about doing a move, and it could be probably if you're thinking about doing it now, maybe in the springtime or something, and start finding out what their availability is, and then get some feedback from them so that you're not caught off guard, because you don't want to be starting this process the week before your moving day, or right when you put the house up. Suddenly you've got a dozen people coming in that the dog doesn't know, and they might not be able to handle it that well. So advanced planning is really going to be helpful.
Yeah, with my dog, if I bring out a suitcase, she starts freaking out. Boxes we're not moving, but if we even go anywhere, she's very concerned. So people start the move itself, it's kind of too late, right? That's should exactly be talking about this before the disruption begins.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even dogs that are really well, that are able to handle it better than that, it doesn't send them into a tailspin. They can still, when you start bringing out lots of boxes and you start moving, you're taking all your books off the shelves, all your clothes out of the drawers, not just what you're traveling with normally, and you're tearing the house apart. Even a dog that doesn't have a problem with small things like what you mentioned, your suitcase, that can really affect them in a negative way. So having them either out of the house, or having somebody that you know that can come and get the dog away from that situation while it's going on, is going to go a long way towards reducing stress on your dog.
Wesley, sometimes we enter homes to show, or we've had clients who are selling their home, and they put their dog in the garage or in the crate in a kind of hidden place. How stressful is that for an animal?
Like a lot of my answers, it depends. So, if you've got the sort of dog that's okay with that type of thing, it's probably not going to be all that much, adding additional stress. But for some dogs, they can't handle that at all. It could be a really traumatic thing. And so if you're working with somebody who is your real estate professional, who's like when Judy and I worked together, Judy was advocating for me on all these steps. I wasn't selling a house, but I would imagine that if you are selling a house and you're working with somebody pretty closely, I would talk to them and say, hey, look, my dog doesn't do well in these situations, and can we maybe schedule these visits so that I can be prepared, and maybe it's just something where it's an hour or two, and they can take their dog to the park or something, or they can take them for a drive, or drop them off with a trusted friend or family member, or have that person come and pick them up, or what have you. Make some plans a little bit ahead of time so that the dog isn't even in that situation, and they're with somebody else that they know and trust. And then you can have them, bring the dog back when it's over, and try to set up those logistics that way, if possible.
Well, Judy and I would work with the seller to arrange that type of limited access. So one, that realtors couldn't just drop in on the spot, see the sign, stop in, but also that there's an hour lead time, or there has to be an approval by the owner that it's okay to have people enter. And then you do something like an open house on a couple of days that would be planned well in advance. So
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea that I just wrote this down. We will be recommending your services when we meet with these people. And if they haven't already started, we're going to encourage them to reach out to you for their dogs. So,
Oh, well, I appreciate that. We actually do a lot of this type of stuff.
Yeah.
For people that have sold homes. A lot of this is an overlap, actually, interestingly enough, with people who are expecting a new baby or something.
Oh, yeah.
Or if they have really young kids. A lot of time that's the same type of stuff where there's all the baby stuff is coming into the house, especially on the first child that's born. And it's almost like a move in reverse where you've got dogs just living life. This is great. And then suddenly there's a playpen there. And then this room is totally different now. And all this stuff's coming in. And who are all these people? So we've actually had where we will sometimes have dogs stay with us in our home. The clients reach out and say, yeah, this is going to be a thing where we're going to be gone and coming back, and they were supposed to have the baby and maybe we won't. And you can just take the dogs for like 5 days while this is happening.
Yeah, and grandma and grandpa are there and all the brothers and sisters. I mean, yeah, it could be very chaotic. I hadn't thought about that one. So what are some common signs that a dog is stressed? What would someone look for?
Again, it depends on the dog, but some things can be kind of covert where humans, we communicate with a lot of big, we talk a lot and you use our hands like I am now. And we're really overt, I guess, in our communication, whereas sometimes dogs can be more that they're signaling to one another. And then, of course, to us, because they don't speak languages that we can hear, can be really subtle. Subtle signs that your dog might not be handling things well is if they seem kind of tensed up in their bodies and their movements throughout the space are not as wiggly and free as they sometimes are. And they seem kind of hesitant and like, what was that? Kind of looking around. Dog that's relaxed will often hold their mouth kind of slightly open and you can kind of see their tongue and a little bit of their teeth. But if your dog is got their mouth closed, walking around and kind of looking around, seems to be not as interested in things that they otherwise would have been, like playtime or leaving the house or being in a different part of the house from you. If they seem to be really clingy, more so than they normally are, those could be signs that things aren't, they're not settling in as well. And there's maybe something about the space that's giving them a hard time, or maybe something that's happening outside the house. They just don't know what it is and it's scaring them. More recognizable signs would be sort of things that are maybe a little bit more worrisome, like if you see a new problem with aggression, or if your dog has sometimes had a little bit of a problem in the past with a little bit of aggressive behavior, but it suddenly gets worse, or let's say they've always woofed a few times at somebody, the UPS guy or the mailman, and then suddenly they're exploding at the door. That type, or they're less tolerant to visitors coming over. That could be a sign that there's some residual stress from either the move or that there's something about the new environment that's given them a problem. Or like toileting issues. If your dog has never, since they were a puppy, like peed on the carpet or something, and suddenly, oh man, I found some pee. That could be another sign.
My dog, there's no doubt if she's stressed, and I heard this, that yawning is not necessarily being tired, that can be a sign that they're uncomfortable with the situation, but she will start drooling. And she's not a bulldog or anything that mastiff that would drool. So, and I mean, she starts foaming at the mouth. When I take her to get groomed, that happens. She's very uncomfortable around other dogs. And that's when I know she's maxed out.
That's a really good point, Judy. It's really important. Each dog is obviously a dog, but they're also individuals. And so knowing your dog, just as you pointed out, where if you see signs like that, where, well, she usually does that at the groomer when she's really weirded out, or like when other dogs get too close. But you're in this new context where these other environmental factors aren't at play. It could be that where this recent move is kind of the culprit, or there's the house is something about the house that they are not adapting to very well. Or it could just be the house itself. This is a new house. I'm just not sure about this, is what's going through the dog's mind, perhaps.
So before that move, at the very beginning of that move, what will an owner do to help that dog adjust to the new home?
Well, what I would do is if it's possible to do, so I had this situation when we bought our house where there was a overlap when we closed to when we actually had to be out of our apartment where we were. And so what we did is before we ever moved anything in, when I would take a trip from the apartment to the house, if it was possible, I would have my dog with me in the car, and I just brought him in and brought him into the empty house and let him sniff around. I turned him loose and he just sniffed around. He explored the space. We went out in the yard. He did the same thing. And then we went home again. And I tried to make it, for him, he was one of those dogs where he's an action and adventure type of dog anyway. So I didn't really have to play with them or bring treats or anything like that. You may have the dog that's a little bit hesitant about new spaces. And so taking things slow, taking things at their pace, you can watch their body language, and your dog, most people know their dogs well enough to see whether they're comfortable or not. And you can talk your dog through it by just using slow, soft, happy talk. Let them follow you around if that's what helps them feel more comfortable. You can certainly try to give treats, scatter some treats around on the floor if they snuffle them up, and that's good. If they don't take them, that's another sign like, wow, this is we need to take things a little bit slower. If they're not taking food, most dogs will take whatever food you give them, and that can be a sign that they're just not ready. And just let them see, look, this is a new and normal part of life. We're going to be coming here, and then just slowly bring them back to the house a few more times, or the condo or whatever. This way, they can kind of ease into the idea of this is the place I'm going to be coming to. If it's possible that you can move a few things in bit by bit rather than the whole thing in one go, that can also be helpful, where you put a few boxes in the trunk or in the back of the cargo area or something and just bring them in slowly, one at a time, just kind of stack them up. You don't even have to unpack. Again, bring the dog in, let them see, this is same place I was the last time. Okay, it's nothing scary jumping out of the closet at me. Let them go out in the yard or wherever it is and sniff around and maybe use the bathroom and bring them back. And then that's it for that day. That would be, if you possibly can do that, where you have access to the new space, that would be the best situation. If not, you can still do it in a way that is similar to that, but what you might have to do is think ahead of time. Once you know, okay, this is the house we're getting, think about where the dog's own space is going to be, just like at the house you have now. Get everybody on board with that who's going to be living there, and agree, okay, this is where the dog's bed is going to be. This is where their toys are going to be, and their water bowl and whatnot. Get that established immediately so that your dog has a place they can begin to learn, this is my spot. And it's helpful if you can pick kind of a quieter, out of the way place in your home that the dog can go in and just kind of hide out and be quiet and take a nap if they need to, or have the toys that they like. And then people aren't they're not constantly having people coming right through their space all the time. They have some place that's their own. And they'll learn it right away. Yeah, this is the same things I had at the other place, and this is my spot. And then just allow the dog to kind of pick their own way. If they want to hang out there, it's important to let them do that and not try to rush them into, you got to hang out over here and you got to be with the rest of the family if that's not what they feel like doing at the time.
I would think that, I just relating to what happens when people move and how stressful and the energy that is created when people are moving boxes in and out, and especially if you add children to that and they're all running and crazy, and then you introduce the animal into that without thinking about it, that has got to be majorly stressful for the animal. Yeah, I would think that would be. So I just had never really thought about it. What could you do to help keep your dog safe during a move?
And that's really important. I'm glad that you're asking this question, because very often, even if you've moved before, for most people, it's been a while. It's been a long time since they've had to do something like that. And that can be a really dangerous situation, because you've got doors open they're held open. You've got gates to yards open that maybe never were open before. And dogs, most dogs, unless they're really terrified of anything outside or the broader world, there's a good chance that they're going to take off on you just because there it is and it's available to them. And depending on your dog's training and whatnot, you may not have the ability to call them back if they do get out. And then you've got the other consideration that if you're hiring a moving team, these might be people the dog has never seen and they've never seen anyone like them come into the house. And so if you've got the sort of dog that is more guarding oriented of the property, that could present a real issue that may not even have occurred to you until now the dog is menacing, or worse, this poor guy who's coming in to move your piano. What I like to do is to think, if you can do one of two things, this would be perfect. The first is, obviously, when your moving date is going to be, so set up that time for at least a couple of days to have your dog somewhere else off the property, completely staying with someone else. So whether that's a trusted professional like myself and my team, or a trusted family member who's not going to be part of the moving process. Again, that's going to take a little bit of advanced work, canvassing your folks that would be a good fit. And that's important too. It needs to be somebody that is trustworthy for your dog. Ideally, somebody that your dog already has a relationship with, so it's not a new thing. Yeah, I kind of know this person, but not really. You want this to be somebody where when they show up and the dog sees them, your dog drops everything they're doing and races over to them, right? And it's like the highlight of their week when they see this person. Somebody like that, somebody that you want. Now, if they're going to be spending multiple nights with this person, which, like I said, would be the best thing, even with that, it's good to do a trial run of at least a night or maybe a couple nights, where you want to know that that situation is going to be a good fit for your dog, that they're not going to go to pieces because they have to spend the night over there with that person. If you could do one night, maybe 2 nights, and the dog seems fine, then there's a really good bet it's not going to be a problem when moving day comes around, or moving days. And then just have that on the schedule and get firm commitments from them that this is what's going to happen, and all the way down to who's going to pick the dog up that day, or am I going to drop him or her off? Have your time set up and have everything ready to go so that it's a smooth transition, sets yourself up for a successful outcome. If you're going to make a reservation with a professional, you want to have all of those logistics ironed out so that person who's doing the move, as you said, Judy, you're already stressed out and there's going to be things that's going to slip your mind. So well before that point, you need to have these things ironed out. Is your caretaker going to come and pick the dog up? Is this somebody that my dog has worked with before and I worked with before? When are they going to bring the dog back? Who do I talk to if there's a change? You want to have that all ready to go. And if it's a professional company will already know that. So if they don't, it's probably a sign that that's not a good fit already. But even then, it's a good practice that with a professional company that you also see if you can do a trial run. Even though they work with a lot of dogs, it's, as I said, every dog's an individual and they're going to respond differently. If you do a trial run of 1 or 2 nights and things do go a little off, that doesn't mean that the deal is off necessarily. That just means that now you've got some time to iron out wrinkles if they do occur. And then once you're able to do that and overcome, most of the time you can, that's just something else that's off your plate. That's a way that you can set yourself up to be able to do that for your dog and have them out of the situation. Now, if you can't do that, what I would recommend that you do is the same beginning process where you canvass your friends and family, or potentially a professional service, and have them come and get the dog out maybe for the day or for large parts of the day, whether they pop them in the car and take them up to hang out in a park, or go and walk around the shop area. Like in West Seattle, they've got the Junction area, someplace like that, where the dog is comfortable going. They've been lots of times, there are quiet areas and you could just browse around and you can hang out there for however long you need. House or the new house, you know exactly when that's going to happen, who is going to be doing the pickup and the drop off, etc. And then just repeat that for however many days it is that you're going through your moving process.
Wesley, say somebody has completed the move, and they've taken all your advice and so forth, but the dog or the pet is just not adjusting to the new home. What kind of advice do you have for them?
It can be a good idea, number one, to have a chat with your vet, ideally before the move process. Sometimes there can be hidden medical issues that just nobody knows about, because normally when you take your dog to the vet, they do, their standard examination. They're not necessarily testing for everything that could go wrong. So often there can be an underlying medical issue that once there's some kind of inflection point will pop out and make itself known. And that could be one thing that's happening. The other thing that's happening is it might not be a medical issue at all per se. However, because this has been so clearly something's happened in this process that's for the dog is very heavily traumatic. And these days, there can be paths to ease that for a dog medically also. There are certain medications that can be used short-term and long-term. That's not something that was within my purview, but certainly having a discussion with your vet first off is the best way to go. Secondly, if you've got a seemingly intractable problem like this and you just can't see a way forward, best thing to do is reach out to a behavior professional, whether it's myself or someone else. There are a few good ones in the Seattle area that can help you. And what they're going to do is come in and make an appointment with you for a couple of hours, and they're going to ask you detailed questions about your situation. Based on your answers and based on their observations, certain things will jump out at them that they can pinpoint and say, okay, yeah, I think I see maybe what the pattern is here that's causing this problem. And then based on your situation, they're going to say, look, why don't we try these 3 or 4 or 5 things in your and your dog's environment, and let's give this a shot for a couple of weeks and see what improvements we have or not. And then based on what happens in that interval, they can say, okay, well, let's go back and revisit these things, or let's try these new couple of ideas and then see what happens.
What differences are there when you're moving the dog in a car versus an airplane? Are there things that you need to consider in that? I know I used to be a flight attendant. I cannot tell you how many times, we'd get off a plane in some area where they were changing aircraft and dogs are left in kennels. They're in that for the entire however long day or whatever.
I would always advocate for driving your dog if you possibly can, just for that reason, because if a dog is above a certain size, and I don't know what the cutoff is, I think maybe it changes for each airline too. You can take dogs of a certain size into the cabin with you.
I think they have to fit underneath the seat, unless they're a service dog. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Service dogs can go wherever, but most dogs are not that. Even then, that can be, how many times does a dog ever fly on a plane, even if they're little like that? It's almost never. Some dogs will do it if people adopt them from shelters, let's say all the way across the country. They'll sometimes fly them, but sometimes not. A lot of places will drive them up to a meeting point with the new owner. Most of your dogs are pretty well adjusted to traveling in a car. Some can't even tolerate that. So if it comes down to it, I would always recommend making a plan, drive with your dog. And even if it's going to take longer, but probably going to be much better for your dog, because they don't have to be in a kennel for however long, 12, I don't know how many hours it takes for them to be. You have to show up at the airport, right? 2 hours ahead of time. And then they immediately have to go into the kennel, and then they stay in there for however long it takes. And they travel.
And, the people are very hesitant to do something like give them water, because you don't know what you're dealing with. Yeah. And you definitely don't want to open the door because they could bolt out. I think you're right. When you're driving, I know with our dog, and I did this because I saw my nephew do it. I had not gotten her a seat belt, so to speak, and now she has one, which of course is to keep her with us if there was an accident, but also she loves to jump out of the car and go. And this stops that action, would keep them from bolting.
Absolutely. Yeah. So even traveling in a car, there are considerations, and that's one big one. When my dog was young, even when he was tethered in, which you should always do, by the way, there are plenty of products on the market, having your dog in some kind of tether or contained in some ways, just so that they're not only that they don't just leap out of the car when the door is open, but just so that if you hit the brakes or something, they're going to go, it's just like any other body. Yeah. So just for safety concerns, but you can train your dog that door opening means that you just stay put until you hear different from me. I trained my dog to do that because even when he was tethered, he would still try to jump out.
Right.
And he was big, and it was just a mess. So just teach your dog that the cue to jump out is when I say something like out or okay, let's go, and not when the door opens. And that just solves that right there. But having him tethered in is a way to do it. Sometimes if you're traveling like that, where the dog knows, like, I've never been here and we're in the car for quite a while. Sometimes their prior training can slip their mind and then they'll go back to old patterns. It's a good safety measure to take anyway.
I mean, most people have their dogs microchip. If they haven't, I would definitely think that would be a good idea before traveling, so that if they did get lost,
Yes.
hopefully somebody would check that.
Yeah, you
So-
want to have their tag on them, their ID tags, as well as the microchip, because the thing about the microchip is you got to take them to a vet. Let's say if your worst case, your dog took off on you, whoever finds them's got to take them to the vet for the reader. Whereas if they get them and they can see that your contact info is on the tag, they can call you right away and you can get your dog back. But I think that underpins our point that if you think about these things well beforehand, that can eliminate a lot of things going wrong.
I think what I'm hearing is just you have to stop and think about your pet and how they're what's going to be the easiest way for them to transition into whatever it is that you're doing, and how do you to protect them to the best of your ability to get them there, and then introducing them to their new environment.
That's exactly right.
So, yeah.
And then taking things at your dog's pace is really important too, particularly in a new spot. And as I said, if you have access to the new home, as soon as you get the keys, I would start introducing your dog there a bit at a time here and there, so that it becomes a normal part of their routine. And then as you get your stuff laid out the way you want it, and now you're living there, then it's not so much of a like a clash for your dog. Now, suddenly I'm in this place and I'm surrounded by all this stuff. It seems familiar, but not really. And what do I do? Having the time to let your dog get comfortable with that is going to make things a lot easier for them. Some dogs they'll be really weirded out the first time you move, but then the next time they recognize what's happening and then they can remember it was a good outcome for them.
Okay.
That's the way my dog was. The first time he actually moved, he was really freaked out. And then after that, we moved a couple more times and then he was okay with it. Your particular dog might not be that way. Your dog might need different considerations and additional planning and additional steps taken. So it's fine to look on like a list or something on a website, say, here's some tips for keeping your dog stress-free and safe, but that may or may not be exactly what you need to do for your dog. Looking at your dog as an individual, and they're going to respond a little differently from every other dog, is very important.
So I would assume that just the ideas that we've brought up now about considering in advance and considering how the animal reacts, and then thinking about how you're going to keep them safe while doors are open and things like that, that would probably apply to any other animal that you were moving, and think about how you're going to get them to their new home safely, and then how you're going to introduce them to that new home, I would believe would be.
That's right. The only other species that I really have any kind of experience with are cats. And I don't know nearly as much about cat behavior as I do dog behavior, but I have been a cat owner. And I've worked, a little bit with taking care of other people's cats. And it's very similar there too. And, cats as a species have their own needs that they need. And then again, every cat is an individual with their own personality and their own preferences. And it's up to each person to know that about their cat and then think about those things. What is my cat going to need?
Especially with cats, when we're holding open houses and trying to sell a home, when I have owners saying, don't let the cat out, that is an accident waiting to happen. Strongly would recommend that owners of cats consider boarding their cats somewhere while people are coming and going in and out of their house, if they just want to make sure that they don't lose their cat.
I agree with that. It's on you as the owner to take steps. It's not on the visitors. And the same goes for dogs too. It's just
really, really hard. It's hard on the animals. They don't feel comfortable with people in the house, and they'll bolt. The cats will go in a heartbeat if they think they can.
I think I would, unless you're a really very savvy cat owner and you've done training with your cat and if you're that type of person, you're going to already have done all of these things anyway. But if you're not that person, I might consider from the beginning getting a cat behavior consultant on board.
That's a good idea.
a cat might have to go into a carrier, whereas a dog might never have to do that. In the same move or the same situation, a cat might have to do that, go into a carrier.
Mhm.
And unless they're trained for that, they are not going to do it, and they're going to hate it. That's going to be that much more stressful on them.
Mhm.
If your cat's not used to being shut in a room, they might have a really hard time with that. And there's also litter box
Yes.
training that
Mhm.
they may or may not take to as quickly in the new home, depending on the cat. And can't really give specific advice for that, except to say, unless you are really the sort of cat owner that just does that stuff as a hobby and
Mhm.
is like, they got their cat recall trained and like they can ask the cat, go in your carrier, and the cat runs in there. If you're
Wow.
not to that level, I would have a consultant that you talk to well in advance of your move.
Well,
How many times a cat goes in the car? Never, except to
Right.
go to the vet.
Right.
Usually not the best experience either.
No.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Wesley, I was just going to say, giving us some fantastic advice. I'm hearing that individual animals are all unique, just like people.
Absolutely.
And they all have unique personalities and the way they adapt and so forth.
That's exactly right. Knowing what's normal for your dog is the very first key to this, because that's going to inform all your planning all the way down the line. Dogs are going to do certain things just because they're dogs, but your dog is going to have certain needs in addition to that because they're who they are. Hopefully that doesn't sound too nebulous.
Oh, no.
No.
Not at all. I think we have covered this pretty well.
Wesley, if people wanted your consulting business or dog walking business or other, how do they get a hold of you?
Very easily. You can go online to PugetSoundPuppers.com, and then whichever service you're interested in, you just click on that. They're right on the homepage, and then there's click on the contact button, and then we'll get back to you same day. We'll get your information and then get the ball rolling for you.
And do you have a phone number on your website?
There is not a phone number on the site, but my number is 206-900-2311. And that's my direct line.
Well, I hope this has been informative to everyone, and I wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much, Wesley, for coming on. And Judy, you have anything last words?
I just hope everybody has a great turkey day. Enjoy the dog show. That is my favorite thing on Thanksgiving. After the parade, I always watch the dog show. Speaking of dogs.
That's a good tie-in.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you for watching and or listening. This has been the Getting Your Edge, How to Right Size Your Home and Life podcast. And we say goodbye for now. See you next time.
Yay.
That's it, folks. Thanks for listening. And stay tuned for future episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Goodbye.